guys. So what do you want to talk about? I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Hey, why don't we talk about Florida? Okay, let's talk about Florida. I don't even know if anybody's watching. You guys doing all right? Yeah, well, I'm trying to find something to eat, and I'm looking around. Anyhow. Hey, Retro Road Mappers. Maud Betty, playing with her flamingos. Playing with my flamingos, because we're going to talk about Florida. And actually, we've got a bit of, hey, Craig and I, always a pleasure to see you, my dear. So, I am, the royal we, I am talking about Florida today. Dawn, nice to see you. I love it when I see people, as I said, entering the virtual auditorium. And here's the crazy thing. I have a bit of Florida weather going on here in PA, or maybe I'm just having hot flash. I don't know. But it's pretty warm out. And because one of our neighbors is mowing their lawn, totally fine. I get that this isn't Hollywood, but it's a bit noisy out. So I shut all the windows. And now I'm like a little bit on the warm side, but which is perfect because I love the spring and summer. I hope you love this beautiful weather. And I have a lot of fun stuff to share about Florida. While we're talking about it, I realized when I was walking around the house that one of my sub collections is not only kitsch, but Florida kitsch. So I've got quite a bit, so that I thought I would start the beginning of the show by giving you a share of some of my collections. So this is a Florida glass that we have. It's the only one like this because I collect actually another type of glass. This one we have in the bathroom, you know, Florida. And every time I'm brushing my teeth and I see this part right over here, the panhandle, right? And you see this Tallahassee, and right here the lady, with the thing, and the guy going. I think of that song Tallahassee Lassie, right? So we're talking about Florida today. So I got my Florida glass. As you may have seen earlier, if you were chiming in, I've also got a couple of these wonderful old school flamingos that I love. I have a few of these. If anybody saw the picture on Instagram from last week, the new lamp we got, our new lamp is surrounded by that. And then, of course, I've got snow domes of various shapes. I had a lot of them from Florida, so I honed it down to some of the more unusual shapes. So I've got this one that's like a bottle, and it's got a little guy who's fishing on a teeter-totter in there. I can't refill it, so it's kind of low tide there. But then I've got a couple of other fun ones. So we've got these folks who are in a treasure chest, right? And they look like they are surfing, and you can actually see through the different windows there. So that's kind of a fun one. And then what else do I have? Snow dome wise. Oh, so you've seen this type before, right? So I've got this one right here. And let me see if I can quickly change. I can't change the date. But this is one that is a calendar. And then if you want, you can put some money in the back. So souvenirs are a big thing in Florida, because you want to show off to people that you went someplace warm when it's cold out. And lastly, at least as far as my Shaco collection, is I've got this guy who's kind of fun. Florida Gators and all that. So there, we've got that. So anyhow, we're talking about the state of Florida. I think we pretty much all know what it looks like and where it is. It's kind of got that iconic look of, the state, the shape of the state, kind of represents, you see that and you know what it is. Though here's a funny thing. I can't remember who it was, but I posted a picture when we were in Florida the last time. I posted a picture of a candy box and it had the outline of the state on it, and somebody thought it was a gun. And I thought, well, I guess if you turn it that way you could, but this is Florida. And so we're going to go. So normally, here's an interesting thing I thought I would do today. I'll mix it up a little bit. We're still going to be talking about Florida. Greetings from Florida. Well, actually, from my living room, in case anybody thought this was Florida. Is I normally try to give you kind of a route. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we start over here and then we go down here and we do it. What do I want to call that? Geographically. And then I realized this. So that to me, I've been kind of thinking a lot about this, and that to me is a thing where I am like going very logically, like we started to here and we go to there, right? And then I realized, well, what would happen? You know what I mean? Let's say if all of a sudden, like things, I ran out of time, and my favorite place was like way down here in the Keys, for example, and one of them is, but I started up here and somehow I didn't, you know, make enough time to go, you know, down here. So what I decided to do today for Florida is to start with what I call the heavy hitters. Hey, everybody, Jerry, Marianne, Ollie. Oh, nice to see you. I love having an international group of people talking about the state of Florida. So what I wanted to do is I want to start with my favorite places. Like if you know, as I said, stuff goes out, I couldn't, all of a sudden, you know, electricity doesn't happen, and I only got you to tell you about a few places, I would know that I sent you in the right direction, right? So anyhow, I'm going to start with the stuff that I highlighted in red. So these are kind of in a not particular order. I guess the first one I would tell you about, you probably know this already, and I've got all these other things. I've got books and stuff, and there was one funny book I wanted to show you. Oh, nerds. I thought I took it. Oh, there it is. So I have loved Art Deco architecture since the 80s. Like, so this book is probably one of the very first ones I got. It's called Tropical Deco, and it's all about the Art Deco history of Miami Beach, Florida, which is a place I've been fascinated by for a really long time. Now, the crazy thing about this book is many of us now know about the Art Deco hotels and motels on Ocean Drive in Miami. It's kind of a classic thing. You see it behind, you know, supermodels, and there's clubs, and there's all sorts of partying and stuff like that. But back in the day, when people were starting to rediscover the deco beauty of Miami Beach, this was actually a place where old school people from like the East Coast, like New York and stuff, would go to retire. And the thing that cracks me up about this book, and I just love it so much, well, first of all, how's this for funny? So I've had this book since 1986. Maybe some of you weren't even born then. And I have loved it. And if you look at some of these pictures, you can't really see unless you go really close. But see here how there's all these chairs lined up? There's some old people here. That's because these places, instead of being hipster bars and restaurants and motels, or hotels rather, were places where people retired to. So they were like retirement homes. Can you even imagine how cool that would be? But I have been to Miami a couple of times, and I want to tell you a few wonderful places that I love in Miami. As I mentioned, Ocean Drive is where all the Art Deco motels are, and you definitely need to check that place out, because it is such a cluster of this one type of, you know, streamlined, modern, all sorts of really cool 1920s, 30s architecture that really doesn't exist a lot in that kind of concentration other places. So it's a wonderful place to go check out. It was, what was I going to say? You can do tours. You can do a walking tour of your own. You can literally just go on the other side. I recommend going on the other side of the street so you get a better view of the buildings. And, you know, you've got the water there too, so you can go to the ocean. But just take a look at those. You can also they have guided tours. We took a trolley tour once, which gets you to see a lot more of the places than you could if you were just walking. And here's a tip, okay? So Cliff Hillis just chimed in, and he's going to remember this story because this has happened to us twice now. First one was en route to our honeymoon. So what would have been X many years ago this time of year is we decided that we were going to not Palm Springs, Freudian slip. We were going to Key West for our honeymoon and decided to spend the evening. We flew into Miami. We were going to spend the night in Miami Beach, so we could stay in one of those classic hotels, and we could take a tour and then drive down to the Keys. Well, we did that, and it was a bit curious because we got a really good deal on a place that was right there on Ocean Drive. And it was this wonderful, cool old hotel called the Edison. I think I still have a magnet on the fridge from them. And when we got into our room, we're like, oh, this is interesting. There's earplugs in here. So that was because if you stay at some of the old hotels right there on the main strip, they've got restaurants and clubs like right below you. So you may not get a quiet, you know, night of sleep. That happened also when we spent the night in Miami. On the way, we went to Havana, Cuba, a number of years ago, and we stayed in Miami that evening too. And we thought, oh, isn't this going to be nice? We have an ocean view. Wouldn't that be lovely? Well, you look over at the ocean, but right below you is a Hoppin' nightclub. So keep that in mind when you're looking for hotels. They're wonderful to look at. Feel free to stay in them, but just know beforehand that, you might ask for a quiet room. The other thing in Miami too, and I'll give you this as a sneaky tip that I learned from my friends at Streamline Streamline Antiques in Dorchester, because they don't go down there all the time, is Collins Avenue runs parallel to Ocean Drive. It's just one street inland, much quieter. Still has motels, or Art Deco hotels you can choose from, a little bit quieter. The other thing that they have in Miami on Collins Avenue is a cute little kind of dinery restaurant called Puerto Sagua. Now, we went here after we had been to Havana, Cuba, and here is the thing that cracks me up. So we went to Cuba and we got a Cuban sandwich, and the place we got it was okay. The place that we got it, the architecture was gorgeous, but the sandwich, not so much. We get to Miami, we get a Cuban sandwich, and then we're like, yeah, this is a Cuban sandwich. Puerto Sagua, it's been around, I think, since 1962, and it's absolutely this cute little, Cuban, diner coffee shop place that's really, a kind of, not a hole in the wall. It's very like a locals type place, but delicious food. Also, if you are into diners, wonderful old school diners from New Jersey and maybe Pennsylvania. There's one called the 11th Street Diner, which is an actual vintage diner that was built in New Jersey. It's a Paramount diner from, I think, 1938. And then it was in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And then it kind of retired like old folks do. They retired to Miami and opened up in 1992. That is a wonderful gem to go to too. The last place I will remind you of, because I dream about our meal there quite often, even though we didn't eat in the fancy eat in the fancy dining room, is Joe's Stone Crab. So Joe's Stone Crab is an iconic Miami Beach restaurant, very fancy, but delicious food. They're known for, big surprise, they're stone crabs, okay? And stone crabs are absolutely delicious. They're like, if you like seafood, they crack them there, you can eat them. Here's my tip, again, little sneaky tip from Maud Betty. If you want to, and you want to have a luxurious meal in their dining room, go right ahead. They don't take reservations, but it is a very nice place. However, if that's not your vibe, or maybe you're there at lunch, or you just want to be a little bit more casual, right next door they have a place called the Marketplace where you can get the same food. You get, a tray, and you can find yourself some seating, but absolutely delicious stuff at Joe's Stone Crab. I was so excited. We were thinking we were going down to Florida at one point this spring. It didn't happen, but literally the first thing I thought was, oh good, I want to go to the Marketplace at Joe's Stone Crab. So that's on the Miami side. Miami, as I said, I've been a Miami Art Deco fan for forever. And I have all these little things here too. These are a little bit more of the bigger hotels from back in the day. Somebody from Newark, Delaware got this at one point in the mail. Pretty cool. But anyhow, I want to keep on going. And as I said, I'm starting today with the places that I love. Instead of going from my head and saying we are going up this route and then we will take a left and a right, we're gonna go in the places that speak to my heart. So let's pitch ourselves over to the West Coast. I will give a shout out to Venice, Florida. We have dear friends, the Shreves, who live there. If you want to experience a cool little downtown area, Venice, Florida on the West Coast, absolutely a delightful little place. But right now I want to share with you a place that's north of that in St. Pete. So St. Pete has a number of things, and one of my favorites, besides Lisa Aussie, is the St. Pete Shuffleboard Club. So this is such a cool thing because it was founded in 1924 when, shuffleboard was just kind of being invented. And this is a club that people who lived down there decided they were going to embrace it. They were going to create this giant, wonderful club where you can go and you can, I'm doing shuffleboard with the little fork, the little tang, I believe it's called. This place opened in 1924. It is designated a historic landmark, and kind of like many of the places we talk about is are places that started out, almost 100 years ago. Many of the places I talk about now. So you get the fact that they had the heyday, and then times changed, and maybe things didn't go so well. And then luckily, because I'm able to share these with you, it's because people have, embraced some of these wonderful historic gems. So the St. Pete Shuffleboard Club kind of fell on hard times in the 70s and 80s when their original club goers were getting aged, and shuffleboard just seemed square. But then in 2005, there was a group of young artists known as the Artillery. They took up the game and joined forces with preservationists to host Friday night games. And now they went from about 35 members. Now there's about 1,500 members. So you can become a member, if you like, of the St. Pete Shuffleboard Club. If I knew we were going to be in St. Pete more than one time a year, or even one time a year, I would consider doing that as like an endorsement and something I love. As I always say, spend your money where your heart is. And I want to tell these people how much I think it's so cool that they renovated, this old school, wonderful kind of tropical, modern looking building, but also the shuffleboard lanes, and they show you how to play the game. But also, even if you're not a member, you can go there on Friday nights as part of the public, and you can pay, and you can go in and you can play. And we met some really nice people there, and I just had such a great time there. It makes me want to go back there. So that is the St. Pete Shuffleboard Club in St. Pete. Speaking of the West Coast. So again, where's my map? So we're talking about the West Coast of Florida here, right? A couple of places I'll do this, and then we'll bop over again, because there are great things in the Panhandle, coasts, center, all sorts of stuff. The Weeki Wachee Mermaid Show. So this is a classic, so unusual. You don't see this barely anywhere, except for Weeki Wachee. It started in 1947, and this was after World War II, when they had discovered certain ways that people could go scuba diving. And one of the things that somebody discovered was that you could have compressed air in a tube, and if you were underwater and you learned how to breathe really deeply for a while, you could inhale compressed air while you were still down underneath, and you never had to get up. So therefore, they mentioned these, or invented, this mermaid show in this natural spring in Weeki Wachee State Park. And so the other cool thing about the Weeki Wachee Mermaid Show is that the mermaids themselves are actually swimming in an actual live spring. They're not in a pool. The place that the audience sits is actually what is the man-made thing. So we are there, we're all sitting on kind of, stepped stadium seating to watch them, but they are swimming around in a natural Florida spring. So that's kind of a kitschy thing to do when you're in Weeki Wachee. I know sometimes the kitsch, and where's my thing? Florida is known for its kitsch, so much so that somebody wrote a book about it. So if you're not into the kitsch, or people you are with aren't so much into it, in Weeki Wachee, you can also take a tour. You can also take a nature tour. There's different things you can do that are more nature-oriented. But to me, I love the fake mermaid show. Well, I mean, the mermaid show is real. Maybe the mermaids are real themselves, huh? So anyhow, that's Weeki Wachee State Park on the West Coast. And since we are on the West Coast anyway, Ybor City, kind of near St. Pete, Tampa, St. Pete, in that general kind of where you would probably fly into and maybe drive to other places, is the Columbia Restaurant. Now this place is so kind of steeped in history, over 100 years old. It's in Tampa, Florida. Ybor City is kind of the Cuban area there, and it is the oldest continuously operated restaurant in Florida. It's also the oldest Spanish restaurant in the United States, and one of the largest Spanish restaurants in the world. So that is the Columbia. It's got this total old school vibe when you go in there. If you order a salad, oftentimes they will make it right tableside. They've got a famous salad and some delicious bread. I can't remember. We've been there once or twice, and every time I've just been charmed. I really feel like it's one of those places where you do feel like you're stepping back in time. And it is still owned by the family that began it back in 1905. So if you're ever in Tampa and you're looking for something delicious to eat and you want to get that kind of immersive old school experience, I would definitely make time to go to the original Columbia restaurant. Now there is one south, I think it's in something circle, St. Armand Circle. That one I'm sure is fine, but to me the old school one in Ybor City is the one that I would want to recommend to you. Okay, now we're going to flop over. I'm glad to see some people have been to these places. Kim, nice to see you. Yeah, that is a very cool place. Let's go back over to the East Coast, shall we? Yo, East Coast, West Coast rivalry. Fort Lauderdale. Now, Fort Lauderdale is known to some people for, what is it? Is it where the boys are? No. Regardless, like, senior week and when people go for spring break, that's what I'm trying to tell you. You see, I didn't go anywhere on spring break or on vacations, so therefore, yeah, that's why it's so foreign to me, the notion of spring break. But that's why I'm doing what I'm doing now. So the one place in Fort Lauderdale, hands down, even in the top 5 places, five, would be the Mai Kai restaurant in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The Mai Kai is like a tiki oasis. And it's not a tiki oasis in the brand name. It is a tiki mid-century Polynesian, kind of like you feel like you're on a tropical island drinking fruity drinks. And it is done up to the nth degree, so much so that I think it rivals some of the West Coast places. I wish I had a picture of it. Oh, you know what? Maybe I've got something right here. This is totally, if I can find it in like 2 seconds, I will. But anyhow, it has been around since 1956. And nope, they used to have a bunch of places, and it looks like an A-frame. You go in, their tiki bar looks like you're in a boat that has been sunk underwater. The women who are serving and the gentlemen wear tropical clothing. And then when you go to eat dinner, they have a dinner show where they spin the fire and they do the dances and they go and all this, and you drink the giant drinks and you eat the food that's aflame and you get tipsy, and it's just a wonderful experience. Our friend Andy Panda Montero, who is a Pennsylvanian like we are right now, he's also a tiki fan, and we got to meet him in real life a number of years ago when we were all down in Florida for the Hukilau, which is one of these tiki events that they have that people put on, kind of like if I did a retro roadmap, and I've done those weekends and things like that where you get people of like minds together. So we met Andy Panda there and a bunch of wonderful like-minded tiki fans. So I will say this to you, like, pay attention to the places that are important to you, that kind of spark that little excitement in your heart, kind of like I'm getting all jazzed up thinking about the Mai Kai. And then if you go to places that mean something to you, you will probably meet people who are also into places like that, like places like kitschy ones. Like I've got my kitsch stuff, and I've met other people who, collect things like these salt and pepper shakers that say Florida on them, and they're made out of little, they got, glitter, they get some glitter, and they get some shells, So just pay attention. I'm telling you the places I love, and this is to inspire you to figure out the places that you would love. So that is on the East Coast. It's a Mai Kai restaurant and lounge in Fort Lauderdale. You can also just go roaming around on their grounds. When you're there as a paying guest, but it's just such a unique place in the entire United States, and we are so lucky that it is still around that we should definitely please make a point to go there. That's how I feel about so many of these places. You know what? I haven't spoken about any place in the middle of Florida yet, but let me tell you one that was an absolute delight and kind of share some stories, because as I said, I don't want to there is no way I can tell you about all of the places in a state, especially when I only have an hour or so. And I might, inadvertently, miss something and then include something. So I'm just going to tell you about the places that mean a lot to me. And hopefully, as I said, they'll inspire you. So Solomon's Castle in Ona, O-N-A, Florida. Kind of like in the middle of not a lot. I think back in the day, it was probably one of those things like, I've got some swampland to sell you in Florida. And it pretty much was. So I want to say it started in 1974. There was this, for lack of a better term, they call him outsider artist. His name was Howard Solomon. He never really kind of fit in the art world. And he had the opportunity to buy some land down in Florida. Again, it was probably really cheap because it was probably swampland in the middle of the state. It wasn't near the coasts. The coasts. Did you just hear how I said that? Coasts. I don't even know where that came from. But what he did was he took his swampland and he literally built his own castle there. He used parts from different things, kind of in that now people call it upcycling or, you know, found art. His castle, his house, he made it, and it's all shiny and silver on the outside, because what he decided to do was go to a local printer, and they would have these these things where they would make the press things that were metal. And once they pressed that copy of the newspaper, that piece of metal was done. So on one side, it looks like a newspaper, like in reverse, but on the other side, it's just plain and silver. So he covered his whole building with that. Inside, there are sculptures made out of things that he found in the woods, pieces of things that were in his garden, found art, pieces of, you know, tuna fish cans and springs and marbles, and they all have such a sense of humor. We were just charmed by the creativity of this place, that, you know, instead of saying, oh crap, I missed out and I have, you know, lousy, you know, swampland in Florida, he actually used this as an opportunity to create a creative oasis. And to me, that is just so inspiring. Now, unfortunately, Howard himself is no longer with us. We had the good experience. We just lucked out. The universe was on our side when we visited, because we were able to meet him. And it was I'll share this story with you guys, because it was one of those times in life where we paid our tickets and we had to wait for the tour, and we're walking around the gift shop, and there's this unassuming old gentleman. He weighed about 98 pounds. He had the kind of a little Captain Ahab beard and a hat. And I see him, and he looked somewhat like comfortable there, but also uncomfortable, just kind of sitting there. And then I was like thinking, and so I went over. It was kind of, I'm not one to always go up to people. I like to respect people's privacy, but I felt like I just needed to say something. He said, "Are you the artist? Is this your place?" And he said, "Yeah, this is my place." He says, "I usually don't work in the shop, but it's been so busy today. They asked me if I could just stand here. Usually I'm behind the scenes." He was a very shy guy. I totally get that. Despite the fact that I'm showing up on here, I'm a fairly shy person myself. And we had a lovely talk. He was talking about his artwork, and I said, "Now, what does this mean?" And everything he made had like a little catchphrase and a little, you know, goofy sense of humor. And I was so glad to be able to tell him how much we loved the place. So it was a delight for us to go there in general. It was bonus that we got to meet the artist, but even though he's no longer there, his family's carrying it on. And I think you'll just get that sense of how much you love the place when you go there. So that is Solomon's Castle in Ona, Florida. So going again to the places that, you know, speak to your heart, and then following that instinct of maybe saying to somebody, "Hey, is that you?" You know, follow that gut feeling, and sometimes it can turn out to be really wonderful. Another one, so that was in the middle of Florida. Now we're going to pop over to the West Coast again, because there's a lot of cool stuff on the West Coast. And one of them isn't really a place. It's kind of a place, but it's more of an event. And it's this event it's held once a year in November for a weekend. It's called Sarasota Modernism Weekend, or Sarasota Mod. And it is put on by the Sarasota Architectural Foundation. And what this is a weekend of, you know, parties and tours and all sorts of things where you go and visit, and then you get shown all the wonderful mid-century modern architecture designed by architects from that area. It's a really fun event. We've been, I think, just a couple of times. Friends of ours go often. And again, it's so neat to find like minds, people who like, you're like, "Oh, I like this breeze block," you know, and somebody's like, "I too like the breeze block." So going to the places where, you know, you're interested in going, you're going to find other people who do it. Like right here, for example, in the comment section on Retro Roadmap, all of you came in here, hopefully not because of me, because I'm just little old me people, but because you are interested in unusual places to go to. You know that I'm not going to send you to a chain, that you, when we are all able to safely go out onto the road again, that you will be armed and excited with, you know, ideas of the places that mean a lot to you, or that excite you, that you want to go. So already, just by showing up here, you know, you've kind of got something, you know, in common with people who are chiming in here. So that is Sarasota Mod Weekend. You can, as I said, even around the year, you'll have to check their website. They do tours of different classic, sorry, I got distracted. I saw a bug. There's a bug. Historic places, buildings. Why couldn't I think of that word? Buildings, houses. And the neat thing is about that weekend is people who own some of these homes will open them up for tours or parties. So you can have the once in a lifetime opportunity to like drink a swanky cocktail in a swanky house and be like, someday this will be, I'll have a house like this, you know? That's how I am. I'm always like, someday I'll have a mid-century modern place like this. So it's Sarasota Mod Weekend. Live that up. Different places also have that. You know, like Palm Springs, California, and we will talk about that. Sorry, this is the one time I have decided to leave the blinds open, and I'm getting so distracted by nature on the outside. There's a red cardinal. Hey, birdie. And then sadly, I remember I mentioned that we had birds on the other side. They literally flew the nest like yesterday. They grow up so fast. They grow up so fast. So we all grow up so fast too. So once it's time for us to fly the coop, let's head someplace fun. I'll send you a few more of them. Oh, so we were just talking about architecture and iconic classic architecture. Even if you're not an architecture geek like I am, I'm sure you've heard of Frank Lloyd Wright, right? Get it? Right? All right. I guess I won't be doing the comedy. But anyhow, in Lakeland, Florida, this is kind of in the middle of the state, Lakeland, or Lakeland, the Florida Southern College is the highest concentration of Frank Lloyd Wright architecture in the world. So if that's your jam, as the kids say, then head there. You can take guided tours, you can walk around and see stuff, you can check all that stuff out. And to me, that is like a destination. Like that type of thing gets me excited. The other really neat thing, so that's the Florida Southern College of, it's a historic district. But that is in Lakeland. And then the other place, which is more of like just a snapshot, but kind of worth it, is, did anybody here, and I know you may not be able to answer me except if you type, but ever see the movie Edward Scissorhands back in the day? Johnny Depp, Winona Ryder, I'm doing this, Edward Scissorhands, and Lakeland is in like the middle of the state. Kind of near, I'm thinking it's like south and to the west of Orlando. Laura, I just happened to see your thing. So, oh, actually, see right here. So see right there, there's Lakeland, and Orlando is kind of up here. So in this neck of the woods. There's another, so the place I was talking to you about, if you ever saw Edward Scissorhands, there is a scene where they are at a, I was going to say they're a shopping mall, but a shopping plaza, like an open air shopping center with this crazy fabulous archway sign. And that is from the Southgate Shopping Center. And it's actually a real place. The Southgate Shopping Center in Lakeland opened in 1957. And while most of the stores and things have changed, they have kept that iconic kind of parabola, very distinctive mid-century modern sign. So if you are a Johnny Depp fan, or I remember seeing this in a movie fan, or you just love old signs, or you love mid-century stuff, Lakeland, while you're there seeing the Frank Lloyd Wright stuff, check out that shopping center and take a picture of it, and then tag it and tell them, excuse me, how much you love the sign. Getting so excited, I'm choking on my own spit. So that's in the middle there of the state. What else do I want to tell you about? We talked about Solomon's Castle. Oh, well, actually, since we're in the middle, let's hit a few places. Since we're in the neighborhood and we seem to be doing well on time. So if you're near Orlando, so Orlando is where a lot of people fly into, and there's all sorts of Disney, Universal, something else, all that big, Florida destinations that are really humongous. I try to tell you about the smaller places. The one I will tell you we did stay at, that was a big place, not the Disney stuff, because that's a little bit more with Retro Road Husband's work, and we have a fabulous time there. We did stay at the mid-century modern version of the Giant Motel there over at Universal. That was kind of fun. It was almost like staying in the Jersey Shore, but in Florida, and a lot bigger. So there's that. But if you just go a little bit south of Orlando, you're going to find two very unusual and fun destinations to go to. One is Gatorland, where we went to, where they have alligators. Where's my guy? These guys, this guy right here, all over the place. You can see them, you can feed them, you can walk around on wooden planks above them. Very fascinating. And I don't know what happened to it, but check this out. If you are into unusual souvenirs, you may or may not have heard of a Mold-A-Rama machine. First time I ever saw one of these was when I went on a field trip in Massachusetts when I was like in grade school, and we went out to a science museum near Worcester. And I remember this thing where you put in a quarter, and you put a quarter in this machine, and it shows you how it pours this hot plastic into a mold, and then it forms it into a thing, like a shape, like an alligator. And then it cools it off and it pops it out. So you get to see your souvenir made right there. And I was just fascinated for years. I didn't have a quarter at the time, because I didn't know to bring a quarter, but I've been kind of obsessed. So when we went to Gatorland, I was so excited to see that they had a Mold-A-Rama machine. So of course I made myself a Mold-A-Rama. I don't know where I put it, because then I started, I'm going to make a collection of them. And then I realized that can be overwhelming too. And I've got my Snow Dome collection is probably my most overwhelming collection. I don't need to be overwhelmed by my stuff anymore, but that's a thing to look for. So if you go to Gatorland, you can get a Mold-A-Rama, and if you Google Mold-A-Rama, there are people out there who do wonderful resources that will show you like where the machines still are, because they're kind of a vintagey thing themselves. The other place that's right in that neck of the woods is the Tupperware World Headquarters. So that may not be of interest to you, but I was fascinated by that. Plastics kind of originated in Massachusetts, hence the pink flamingos and things like that. Tupperware is there's such an interesting history of not only the product, but the way they sell it. And they actually have kind of a museum of Tupperware. You can go in and you can see old school Tupperware stuff. We went there with Rick Kilby, who lives in Florida, and he writes a lot about cool Florida places. But you can go in. You can also, they have like a little thing. You may be able to put a quarter in, or I don't know if you just press a button, and you can get like a little souvenir piece of Tupperware. You burp it, boop, boop. And it was just so much fun. I love that kind of stuff. And we found out, check this out. Again, randomness and wonderfulness happen when you go to the places that are important to you. We randomly found out just by texting friends of ours who lived in Florida when we were there, like, oh, hey, check us out. We're at the Tupperware thing, that a friend of ours actually is a model, and he was one of the first males to ever appear on like the front of a Tupperware catalog. I wouldn't have known that. We wouldn't have known that had we not gone to the Tupperware Museum. So those were both very south of south of Orlando, and they're a nice alternative to the sometimes overwhelming corporateness that goes on in Orlando. So that is kind of some of the middle stuff. But I definitely want to take you back out. I just want to make sure. I'm going to take a quick look here. And if you have, this might be a good time while I'm perusing my notes for me to remind you to please, if you have cool, vintage, interesting places that you want people to know about in Florida, pop them in the comments here. That way, a couple of things wonderful will happen. One is that you get to show off about your places. You get to share the excitement. The other thing is people who are in the comments section right now will also get to see them and get inspired by your tips. And then lastly, when this video is over, I still archive them on the Facebook page in the video section. So people who can't chime in right now or tune in will be able to find out what other places there are besides mine. So feel free to put your Florida faves in the comments. You know, this is a collaborative effort like Stone Soup. So let's see. We talked about that place. We talked about this. Oh, good thing to remember, or I can mention right now. So we weren't speaking of COVID, but obviously that's going on right now. And one of the brighter lights is the fact that people are able to use drive-in movie theaters as places to safely be able to self-distance because we're all in our cars. And there are 7 operating drive-in movie theaters still in Florida. To me, that's not a lot for a state that big, but that's what they have. They had one of the first ones that opened up in 1938, and they are known to the largest operating drive-in movie theater in the United States. It's in Fort Lauderdale and has 14 screens. So there's that. Craig Nye. You're right, glass bottom boats. So I just checked that out and see, I said we have this stuff all over the place. So this isn't us, though sometimes I think this looks like Cliff's mom. And this guy here, I don't know if you can see him, always reminds me of like Bill Murray, right? But this is an old time souvenir picture that I picked up somewhere of people in the glass bottom boat at Silver Springs. And yes, according to the internet, probably not right now because of COVID. Everything is slowly and safely opening, but you should still be able to when everything's back to a different, everything's more open, to go on the Silver Springs and in a boat and looking down into the water in a glass bottom boat, just like these people did back in the day when they were on their vintage vacations. So thank you for reminding me of that, Craig. I haven't done that. We went on a different cruise with a friend of ours in glass bottom boats. I don't think it was at Silver Springs, though it might have been. In any case. Oh, so speaking of springs, Tarpon Springs. I think I've got, let me check here, because I've got Florida attractions. I got beautiful Florida. Trust me, I got these all as a lot. Sebring, I don't know what was there. I should probably check that out. Oh, the Singing Tower. I was going to mention the Bach Tower. That's the last place. That's where we were when we found out all this craziness was going on with COVID and gigs were being canceled, and we knew the coming home was going to be different than we thought it was going to be. We will always have a place in our hearts for there. There was Marineland, Marine Studios. They even had an Orange Blossom Trail. But of course, the last one, oh, Silver Springs. Oh, check it out. So there's that Silver Springs one, Silver Springs, Florida. But the one I was looking for, of course, is the last one in the list, and it's Tarpon Springs. Tarpon Springs in Florida. It's on the West Coast. It's like north of Tampa and St. Pete. And at the time, there was a real sponge diving exhibit. So here's the deal. Here's the deal. Yes, Kim, I know we bonded over our love of Bach Tower. So let's talk about so Tarpon Springs is a place where not even like just a little over 100 years ago, not that far back into our history, was just like a sleepy little place that a lot of Greek immigrants came over from Greece for a better life, because that's what we do here in the U.S. You come from one place to another and you try to make your life better, because that's what we all should be doing with our short amount of time on this planet. And a lot of Greek people came there, so there's a lot of Greek food influences and restaurants and fun stuff like that. But sponges, like, you clean you're cleaning your dishes with sponges and things like that, but they're not the plastic kind. They're like the ones that grow in the bottom of the ocean. And you can still see that they do that. They harvest sponges. There's a history museum there, and it's just kind of that old-timey Florida stuff that I just love. It's probably doesn't look like this, but let me see what we have here. So sponges, things like that. When we went, this was so much fun. And again, the neat thing about travel, I'll tell you this, is dreaming about it. Like what we're doing right now, this is 1/3 of the fun of traveling, okay? It's the anticipation, the research, and the excitement of, I'm so excited to try these places out, right? So don't discount the fact that while we can't go any place right now, do not you know, do not discount the fun that you have when you think about these places. Every time I'm researching for one of these Retro Roadmap episodes, of which I'm doing 2 a week, and this is my 21st, I get so rejuvenated and excited about the cool vintage places that are around and that I want to go visit and I want to share with you. So this is part of the joy of travel, is this anticipation and knowledge and looking forward, right? The other one is when you're there experiencing it. You're like, oh my God, I'm here. I'm actually in the place. And it's never going to be what you thought it was because you weren't there before. So it's good. It's a different thing. And you have the opportunity to make it as cool as you want. And then, so that's a third of the beauty of travel. And then the final one, and that you have all three of them, is after you've traveled, you can come back. You come back, and if you've done it right and your head and your heart are in the right place, you will have some wonderful stories to remember and share, right? So like to me, I think back on when we went to Tarpon Springs, right? And this is what I think of, how we went into a Greek restaurant and we had this thing called the flaming cheese. They came to we saw other people getting it and we thought, why not? Well, we love cheese, we love food on fire. And they came to our table and they had a little square of cheese and they set it on fire and it melted and then we ate it and it was great. We went and went to a kind of a kitschy, old kitsch, you know, tacky, old museum about the history of the sponges. We walked around, we looked at some, you know, gift shops. I got a call from Charles Phoenix, who happened to be in Florida the same time that we were in Florida. And we were like two ships. We were unable to connect up, but I just remember the thrill I felt when all of a sudden I realized, you know, that he and I were in the same state. And that's a fun thing I think back on that happened, but that I also have such fondness in remembering. So as I said, just because we can't travel right now does not mean that this kind of, you know, getting the gears in motion and saying what's important to me and what has she told me that I'm excited to go to, this is part of it. And I'm getting so worked up, I'm probably gonna have a coughing fit, so hold on for a sec. I'm okay. Just need some water. That's not it. Okay, in any case. So that's Tarpon Springs. So it's kind of this wonderful old school enclave of Greek restaurants and souvenir stands and a place to go have a drink while you're looking at the ocean. And I highly recommend that. Where else? Let's see. Andy's Igloo Restaurant is a great place for a burger in Winter Haven. We had a great time there. I think Charles Phoenix went there as well. I know. We talked about that. Oh, a couple of other places. And then I have kind of a neat story that I want to share with you. Oh, fun, Jeff. I did not know you used to live in Florida. Very nice place to be in the winter, though. I guess it gets kind of hot. So I would love to talk to you about some historic hotels. Now, I admit when we usually travel, we don't often stay in them because at the moment they are slightly out of our price point, but we do love to visit them. And that is one of the goals I have in life, is to be able to comfortably go and stay in some of these wonderful old school hotels. One of the ones I just saw pop up online this morning, is the Gasparilla Inn and Club in Boca Grande, in Boca. You know, it was opened in 1913. It's part of Historic Hotels of America, and it just looks like that classic. Like, Florida has always been a place where people go for vacation, so there's always that vibe. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that the Peabody in Orlando had the Duck Parade too. Thank you, Jeff. I will have to check that out because I always think of the one in, is it Nashville? No. Memphis has that. So I'll do, thank you for putting that in there. But yeah, Old School Lodge at Wakula Springs that's on the Panhandle is kind of an awesome place. The Don Cesar in St. Pete Beach. Even if you can't stay at these places, maybe you can, and please have a wonderful time. If you choose not to, but you still want to experience it, oftentimes some of these wonderful places will have a bar or a restaurant that you can go to. Sometimes they even have tours, and it's just fun to see the different places you can stay. Excuse me. I must have inhaled some glitter. I apologize. This is what you get for live Facebooking. If I only had a savory ice cream from Jackson's Ice Cream Parlor and Restaurant in Dania Beach. So Dania Beach, We went there, I believe it was when we went to the Hukilau, so it's going to be near Fort Lauderdale. And if anybody had ever been to kind of that, like the 60s, 70s, 50s version of turn of the century, so that kind of old-timey ice cream parlor type place with a bunch of signs hanging up and the little sweetheart chairs made out of wire and gigantic, ice cream sundaes, and the person who serves it's wearing a red and white striped shirt. Well, that's what Jackson's is like. And it is an adorable kind of throwback. It reminds me of the one time we went down to Connecticut and visited my cousins, and we went to a Shakey's Pizza. And it was just one of those kind of, fun throwback places that now is even more throwbacky in that. So that's Jackson's Ice Cream Parlor in Dania Beach. And then, as I mentioned, because, oh my God, thank you. Oh, and look, so yeah, but check it out. Isn't he good? He's good. He brought me a glass of water, and I feel like I obliged after I take a sip. Pardon me, smoochies. Is to show you, not only does it have a flamingo on it, where I was just about to talk to flamingos, but this glass right here, this is a Tervis tumbler. They actually make these in Florida. They are like dual sign. This is not, trust me, this is not awkward product placement. I'm just letting you know. But it's double-sided, so it's insulated, and it keeps things hot if you want them to be hot and cold if you want to be cold for a really long time. We picked up some of these on some of our tours, and they're great for fresh orange juice and vodka in the morning or the afternoon or the evening. But thank you, boo-boo. So anyhow, I want to talk to you about flamingos because I love flamingos, the tacky ones and the real life ones, because there's a place in Davie, Florida called Flamingo Gardens, which is one of the oldest natural botanical gardens in South Florida, and it has a place where you can actually see Florida flamingos in the wild. So if you want to see the real live ones, not just, where did I put them? In here. Not just these guys, you can go see them in real life in Davie, Florida. So, couple of things I wanted to mention to you, as we have a few minutes here, is a couple of stories. Because as I mentioned, there's no way I can include all of the actual, vintage and retro places in Florida. So I try to give you my highlights, right? I also want to talk about, before we, kind of end this, is the very southern tip of Florida is the Florida Keys. And that's where Retro Road Husband and I went to have our honeymoon back in the day. I think I mentioned that earlier, but this is live, and I'm just kind of, this whole thing, despite this is all just a riff. So this is what's going on up here, for better or worse. And here's a kind of a takeaway. I will mention 2 places to go to in the Keys, but if you don't go there, it's fine. We stayed at the Eden House Hotel. It was an adorable little old school place. We still get emails from them, and we still want to go back. It was such a cool, even back then I wanted to stay at someplace cool and old and authentic, so that was the Eden House. And if there was one place I would mention to you, I think it was the Blue Heaven is a funky little restaurant to go to in there. But here's the deal. So on our honeymoon, obviously we are there and we want to do stuff. Well, when we told people we wanted to go there, so many people we know had been to the Keys that we had like a list, like an itinerary from people of places that people had suggested. And for whatever reason, I guess it was because it was back in the day, we felt obligated to go to all the places because everybody had told us to. Well, we ended up being exhausted. And so I share this with you because I am probably sharing, every week I share places to go to, but please do me a favor. Don't just go to all these places because I share them with you. Pick the ones that mean the most to you. Don't not go at all, but pick the ones that resonate in your heart and go to those ones. And I'd rather you spend, more time in fewer places than try to run around and do it all. Because I do that sometimes, and while it can be fun, it can also be exhausting. But I wanted to leave you with this fun story from not our past trip to Florida, which was great, but the last trip we went down there, because as I've mentioned, Retro Road Husband is a musician, and he has been able to play at Epcot Center in Disney a couple of times, and we have met the most wonderful people. Some of them are on today. It's so nice to see kind of our new friends from Florida, but also it's a really cool opportunity to go and, you know, be down there. So last year, we were sitting there waiting to fly home. And you know that kind of feeling, you're like, oh, we had such a great time and we have to leave. And we were there in the airport, and the woman comes over the thing and she says, hey, we're looking for people to get bumped off of the flight. She's talking to a microphone. This is me on the microphone. If you're interested, we will offer you a couple $100 if you want to go on a later flight today. And I thought, wow, you know, sadly we don't have our dog anymore, but we could do that, and we could get a couple $100 to, you know, put towards different travel. So I said to Cliff, I was like, do you want to do that? And he was like, well, I don't know. I said, well, let's just try. So I go up to the woman, I give her my information, and she says, if we need you, we'll call you, right? So I'm like, okay, can't hurt to try. Because how fun would that be to have kind of like some money in the kitty for the next time we want to go traveling? So we're sitting there and she doesn't call us, and that's fine. Okay, it was a little bit disappointing, but still, at least we tried. Like, she never would have called us if I didn't go up and give her our information. But then she still didn't call us. No harm, no foul, I think is that a sporty term or whatever? So we get onto the plane and we're like, sure, we're gonna go home. And then literally buckling in, getting our stuff all settled, and the stewardess, flight attendant, comes over and was like, you were the people who said you'd be okay for getting off of the flight, right? And we were like, yeah. They were like, well, we have a couple that really, really, really needs to get to to Pennsylvania. If we offer you, and they offered us like triple what they had offered before, would you be willing to leave the airplane? And I said, before he even got out of his mouth, I was like unbuckled and in the airport. And so the cool thing about that was, like, we kind of took this opportunity to do something different, and we were able to help people to get to Philly when they really needed to. So we ended up having a crazy, unexpected day because we just kind of seized the moment. So this was my carpe diem, my carpe diem moment. And then, Cliff was like, well, maybe we should just stay in the airport. I'm like, are you kidding me? We have like 5 hours in Florida. What do you want to do? And so I said, let's do this. So we went and we rented a car. We're in Orlando. I said, let's just keep on going east until we hit the water, and then we'll have lunch, and then we'll turn around and go back. And that's exactly what we did. We ended up at in Cocoa Beach, at the Westgate Pier, and we literally were out on the ocean, and then we're on this pier, and we get to the very, very end, and we got ourselves a cocktail and some snacks. And I said, now, isn't this better than either being on a plane or, heading, or just sitting and eating 3 different kinds of soup in the American club that we would have had to pay for anyway? And again, it's just such a fun memory. And the reason I love that memory is because we had so much fun. But here's the takeaway for me, is like, this unexpected opportunity came up, and we had the opportunity to be like, no, we're not going to do that. But I say this to you, when exciting, interesting opportunities come up for you, and they will, just give it a shot. Just try. Because even if it doesn't happen, you will know that you did that. You will know that you had the opportunity to go do that fun thing. And it's so much better to look back on your life and say, I tried, versus like, damn it, I wish I had done X. Because I have plenty of those experiences. So I realize I'm getting a little bit more. That was more of my Just Drive Your Life hat than my Maud Betty Retro Roadmap hat. But, we are all here in our houses, and we have, the future is happening now, but also ahead of us. So anytime you have an opportunity to do something good, to, do something interesting, something comes up, seize that day, because it won't happen again. Okay? So that's me being a little bit, zen or whatever, but I love you guys so much, and I want us all to be safe and healthy and happy and make the most of the time we have on this planet, no matter how long that is. So that's why I tell you about the cool vintage places, and I try to remind you to do the things that are important to you, because you want to be able to look back at your life and with memories, not regrets, right? So looks like we're almost out of time. So thank you so much for everybody showing up in Florida with me. I had a wonderful time. Didn't even get to show you half of my stuff. Anything else I want to show you? I think we're good. But just remember, Thursday is going to be Michigan. So we're going from Florida to Michigan because I feel bad for the states up there. I didn't get a chance. Very excited to do some, there's a really cool bunch of mid-century modern, mid-mod map is my other thing. So if you like places like that. But seriously, just remember that, you know what, you have control over your life. You decide where you are going to go on vacation. You decide if you're going to show up at one place or another, just like you're in your car and you're driving. You can change your life. You can, decide where. You can decide even if you get into the car and turn it on. You could just sit there and never turn your car on and go nowhere. Or you can get in your car, figure out a fun place to go, turn on the gas, turn on the car, push on the gas, and drive towards it. So, as Maud Betty says, just drive in the directions of your dreams. Okay? And we'll see you on Thursday.